Welcome to the Everything Saxophone podcast, the place for saxophone interviews, reviews, and news. I'm Donna Schwartz.
And I'm Nick Manella, and we're your hosts, bringing you your weekly dose of saxophone. And now let's get into the show. Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Everything Saxophone podcast. Super excited to bring you this week's interview with Noah Preminger. But before we get into it, I just wanted to let you guys know to hop on over to our website at saxophonepodcast.com and sign up for our email list. You get a fantastic free gift, the 5 best saxophone warm-up tips, and that's a great way to keep up with the show. We'll be sending out notifications for new episodes and all the exciting things that are happening here at the Everything Saxophone podcast. So head on over to saxophonepodcast.com today and check out what's going on over there. So as I said, I'm really excited to bring you this interview with Boston/New York-based saxophonist Noah Preminger. Let me give you a little bit of background on Noah. He is from Canton, Connecticut, attended school in Boston, and has been East Coast based for his whole career, splitting his time between New York and Boston. And Noah's a really relatively young saxophonist at the age of 32, but already has one of the most prolific outputs of any musician that I've ever met. He's putting out multiple records a year, and we talk a lot about that in the episode. Another thing about Noah that I think is really great is this is going to be a very different interview in terms of specific saxophone stuff. We don't get into a lot of that in this episode, and I think that really reflects who Noah is as a person and as a musician. Noah has this real ability to just play the saxophone, and it's almost like the music is such a part of him that he doesn't really think all that analytically about playing the saxophone or gear or what he's doing. It just kind of flows out of him, which is a kind of a different way of thinking than some of the interviews that we've done so far on this podcast. So I think that this is going to illuminate another side of being a musician and playing the saxophone and being a person in general in the world with today's episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy our interview with the great Noah Preminger. Noah, how are you doing, man?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for doing this. So let's start off by just what does a day in the life of Noah look like these days?
I do a fair amount of teaching.
Okay.
Teach, a few days a week, and I do a lot of writing. I have 3 records coming out this year, and I'm making another couple this year to come out next year. And just writing a lot, traveling a bunch, playing gigs, and doing some teaching.
So a little bit different every day?
Every day, I try to keep it different every day. I don't know, days I don't have much, maybe I'll ride my motorcycle or go out and do something else. But
cool.
Yeah.
So let's jump into maybe some of the record dates. I know I was reading your bio before we got on, and you made your first record at age 20. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I think I was just finishing up school. Yeah.
So what was it like to go in to the studio with that's a really heavy band for your first record? Was it nerve-wracking to be that young and being the leader of a date and working with guys like that?
A little bit, I guess. I never had the nerves thing. I guess I kind of know what I got, and if other people, if they don't want to play with me, I guess they just won't play with me. Or, I feel like, the whole nerves thing was never an issue for me, which I guess I'm lucky. But that record, that was a lot of fun. I had a friend named John McNeil, who was a faculty member at the school I went to, sort of get in touch with these guys that I wanted to play with on my record. These are people who I grew up listening to and that I admired. And, anybody can make an album and call whoever they want to play on it, So I had a record's worth of music that I had written in college that I was really, really stoked about. And it was kind of a breeze. So that was fun.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. Now, where does that that confidence come from? Of like you said, I don't get nervous. That's not something that really affects you. Does that just come from like skills in music? Like you're confident in yourself when you step into that situation? And did you do anything to kind of develop that when you were younger, or is it just something that you've always had?
Just just practicing a lot when
Yeah.
I was younger, and I mean, confident that I can execute the ideas that I want to execute, and also confident that knowing that I have the freedom to improvise and say what I want to say without getting held back.
Cool.
And just, again, I don't think, rarely now do you find yourself on a bandstand and somebody vibes you or somebody makes you feel like you don't belong there.
Mm-hmm.
People are all very, very, nice these days.
Right.
And so, sure, I mean, I've had situations where, especially when I was younger, maybe I wasn't supposed to be there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a learning experience and that's all well, but yeah, I don't know. It's
Cool.
as long as you know what you got, there's no reason to be nervous.
Well, I think that's some great advice because I think that gets to so many people and keeps them from stepping into situations that maybe could advance, to realize like, oh, I guess I do belong here and all the hard work that I did can pay off, but only if I let myself get into that situation. You know what I mean?
I also try to always surround myself with people who are amazing musicians.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, always playing with people who I think maybe could be are better than me or something like that, or more, famous or whatever you want to call it. It's humbling. So yeah, nerves really never plays an issue.
That's great, man. So let's talk a little bit about the album that just came out. Came out on February 16th. Man, this is another amazing band. One of my favorite trumpet players ever. Jason Palmer is on it. Can you talk a little bit about this music and what it means to you and why you're excited to put it out into the world?
Yeah, this record label called Crisscross, which is sort of a legendary label, approached me last year. His name is Jerry Teakins, the president, the owner of the label. And he said, do you want to make a record in like 3 or 4 weeks when I'm in New York City? I'm lining up some people to record. I said, yeah, I would love to. I want to do all original music. And so I spent the next 2 weeks or so writing for it. And so I wrote about 14 or 15 songs.
Wow.
In this really short amount of time. And it was all from the saxophone. Normally I write on the piano. But this record, basically I just set my recording device down and blew for, a week or two. And transcribed the things that I thought that could make cool melodies, and that was my record, basically. As easy as that. Yeah.
That's great. How do you sift through all that material? I mean, you must have been recording a lot of different stuff, right? How do you go back and listen to all of it and get through hours and hours of material to find the gems in there?
I remember one day I had a gig actually with Jason Palmer. We were playing in this park, and during sound check, I was just kind of, I think I was testing the microphone or something, and I just hit record and came up with a couple cool ideas. And then actually earlier that day, I was listening to NPR, and they were interviewing a writer, I think from the New York Times, who had just written an article about the difficulties of being a white male in our society today, and with a number of different things, but I think it was race driven, and how, and in particular, a white male that cares a lot about racial injustice.
Okay.
And so that day, I think I was just noodling around, and after hearing that story, I wrote this tune called "Walking on Eggshells" because he described it as walking on eggshells,
Okay.
And so, just a simple melody that was like do 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 do, and as I was, warming up in sound check, and so wrote a counter bass line, and that's my tune.
Cool. So it sounds like you take like a pretty, I like your approach to writing where it's not like, okay, I'm going to block everything out for 2 days and like go into my bunker and write a bunch of serious jazz tunes. Does a lot of it come from just like everyday experiences?
Man, some people are blessed where they can just sit down and write, or, I mean, writing on deadline really helps.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have a record that I'm making in June. That's really important to me.
Cool.
But I mean, I'll probably wait until, May to start writing it,
Right.
just to put the pressure on it. And I don't know, I write well on deadline. But yeah, I mean, I've done writing retreats, a whole bunch of them, and it's really hard, man. It's like hard to just sit there and come up with ideas. I had writer's block really, really bad when I think right when I left college. I used to write like a tune a day through college and just after college, and I moved to New York City and got really bad writer's block. Wow. And it was right at that time I met Fred Hirsch and played a little bit with him and his band. And I went to his pad one day in Manhattan, and he said, what's going on? How have you been lately? And I said, I got really bad writer's block. Mm-hmm. It's kicking my butt. And he said, look, you don't have writer's block. All you have to do is just sit down and think of something.
Right.
Like literally anything, and just get an image in your head and put some notes down on the piano and start writing, and it'll come. Cool. And that was really helpful. So now if I know I need to write, I'll just think of, whatever, a person, an object,
nice,
a city. Yeah.
That's great, man. So that kind of brings me to like your output. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about writing so much, right? Like you put out so many records with so much original material on it. I mean, it's kind of insane. And coming from somebody who has made a bunch of records with a bunch of bands, I know how much work it is to actually, put out a record, get the band together, get the studio booked, do all the work that comes after it. How the heck do you maintain this level of output, on a consistent basis?
I think I have kind of an odd career because I don't tour very often. I used to, when I was in New York City, I toured a lot. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what a lot means now, but then it felt like a lot. I would go to Europe, between 5 and 10 times a year, which felt sort of significant, with my band and a couple other projects. Yeah. Now, I rarely tour. Maybe I try to tour my band once or twice a year. And it's because there are a lot of gigs, or the gigs that exist pay garbage. And so usually you lose money. I mean, look, it takes money to make money in 99.9% of the situations in life, and in different careers. And I don't have money, pouring out of my ears to take really expensive bands on the road that will get bigger fees. And, yeah, last year I took the band on the road for a couple weeks, and this year I'm doing a tour in October on the West Coast, and then I think an Asian tour just after that. So, but yeah, I mean, in most cases, I mean, I don't know if you're supposed to admit these things in public, but in a lot of cases, it's a losing financial effort. It doesn't look good for most people. So even all the awards you can win and all the records you can make and be the critics' darling, and yeah, people need to hear that it's not easy.
Right. Yeah, that is a really important thing to hear. So would you tour a lot more if it were financially viable?
Kidding? I mean, look, I love teaching motivated students.
Okay.
And I feel like it's really rewarding to kind of just give my 2 cents and what I've experienced, and because I think I've done a significant amount of things in the past 10 or 12 years since I moved to New York City. But yeah, I mean, I would love to balance out a little bit of teaching with a little bit of touring, and in an ideal world, sure. I mean, if I had tens and tens of thousands of dollars to throw at for publicity and a tour to hire the most expensive musicians in the world, and yeah, that would be wonderful. Yeah. I mean, you hear stories, especially lately, of musicians just kind of like jumping up to the top level because they're able to afford it. You can buy a career.
Right.
That's no secret. So that's great for those people. You have to do your best with what you've been handed. So.
Right on. Cool. So let's talk about teaching a little bit. Like, where are you teaching these days? Are you just mostly doing it privately, or are you teaching at any schools, or what's going on with the teaching side of things?
Yeah. I have some college students in Boston and in New York City, and I just do a lot of private teaching, basically out of the home. And
cool.
Yeah.
What do you like about it? I mean, what keeps you teaching? Because obviously you're doing a lot of performing. Is teaching like an equal thing to that, or is it something that's more financially based?
No, it's to make a living.
Right. Right.
It's to be able to afford a car and all that kind of thing. I mean, look, if I could tour all the time and not teach, I would. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that most people feel that way as well. I mean,
right.
We're performers. We want to express our, we want to tell our stories on stage, but it is really fun and to see students or adults or whatever, eyes light up when you tell them, how to manipulate time or your theories on like, I don't know, modal pivoting and, whatever, inspiring people to, to think a different way is really fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
What about your education? What is your educational background? Where did you go to school, and what was your path like through the ranks of education?
I grew up in Northwest Connecticut in an average middle school with a really great band teacher that got me really psyched on playing. And then I went to a different public high school that had a great music program, a deep history. A lot of really great musicians went there. And then I went to college at New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. It was the only school I wanted to go to. I wanted to study with, and throughout high school, I was studying with Dave Liebman as well. He was sort of my first major mentor. Mm-hmm. And he got me transcribing a lot and basically taught me, how to develop my own voice. Cool. And that's the most important thing. And that's what I stress the most with teaching is developing your own identity. I mean, I don't think anyone wants to sound like other people.
Right.
So that's important to me. And I learned that from Liebman. And I don't know, I studied with a whole plethora of other people while going to college and continued studying by seeing live music and checking out recordings and being an active listener while in New York City, which on any given night, there's, 5 or 10 concerts that are exciting. So, I mean, still every year I go through like the end of the year lists that like Downbeat or New York Times or NPR put out, or the Jazz Journalists Association. Mm-hmm. I purchase the, top 10 or 20 CDs that they recommend if I haven't heard them already. Just to see what else is happening. And, I mean, I hate when students say that they hate, music and they won't listen to it because they think it sucks. Oh, that's painful for me because you can learn just as much, figuring out what you dislike about it as you can what you do like about it, Right. And so whether it's a musician's tone or their arrangements or compositions or I don't know. So anyway, I like to do that around December and January every year, check out the stuff and figure out what I dig and don't dig about it.
Cool. Anybody on your radar right now that you really are digging?
No.
Okay.
John Coltrane,
So what about, you had mentioned John McNeil, right? So I assume that you studied with him at NEC, and I'm from the Boston area, so John McNeil is like a legend around these parts when it comes to teachers I've had that have gone to NEC or whatever. What did he mean to you? It sounded like he was really, really an important figure in your life, helped you put together that first record date, and I assume taught you a lot about life and music.
Yeah, he taught me a lot of lessons. Yeah. He kind of took me under his wing, and he does that with tenor players every now and then, I think, and that was important to have. I don't know, I didn't move to New York City with peers. A lot of people move to New York City with their peers. There's like a crew from Houston, Texas. There's a crew from Philly. Yeah. There's a crew from Baltimore. There are these pockets of crews that still play together and do interesting things together and develop kind of a clique. I wasn't fortunate to have that, which was kind of a drag. So when I moved to New York City, having someone like John McNeil really, helping me get introduced to other musicians. And we had a Wednesday night gig for almost a year. I think it lasted about 10 months at a jazz club in Brooklyn. And so there, it was me and John and a drummer and a bass player playing quartet every week. And if the house bassist or drummer wasn't available, he would call somebody else. And so it was an opportunity to meet a ton of different musicians and have those people also hear me, Yeah. So John was instrumental in helping me really get heard, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. So many people that I talk to just have nothing but the best things to say about him and have similar stories to you. Like, if it weren't for John, nothing would be kind of happening for me. So it's really cool to hear that.
It's just he's funny as hell.
Yeah.
He's lived through different generations of the scene, and he's an interesting player, an interesting writer, an interesting arranger. I mean, he's dipped his feet in a lot of different circles, and so to be around someone like him who knows so much about the scene is really helpful when you're 20 years old.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting also what you said about like cliques. I had the opportunity to talk to Bill McHenry a little bit, and he was like the opposite of you. He went to school in Boston for a year, and then all of his buddies moved to New York together. So he decided to just kind of drop out of school and move with them. So it's kind of interesting to hear that dichotomy between you and somebody like that.
Yeah. Look, man, everyone's got their own path, I wanted to make sure I got a degree, and then, years later, I went back to school and got a master's degree when I was almost 30, Yeah. So, everyone's got their own path, and I don't know, I think, it's weird. Yeah. It's weird being, playing music that's really unpopular, and trying to be a strong voice within it,
Right.
And times change, and everything with the way we make records and the way we handle PR, and there's just so many different little pockets within, that form this one thing, this one career. There weren't music degrees when trained in early Miles or when they were playing. So it's just a whole different scene.
Right.
Now everyone's very, very clean, which is great. But, it's just within the course of 30 years, it's like a total 180 kind of.
Right.
Different solar system. So
that's interesting. So something we were talking about before we actually started recording the interview is Boston and New York. We were talking about where you're based out of, and maybe people from the East Coast don't really know that there's kind of this pipeline between Boston and New York. So many schools in Boston, and then obviously such a huge jazz scene in New York City, and all these teachers and performers that kind of split their time between both. So where are you located right now, and why? Are you in Boston or New York?
I'm split between the two.
Cool.
I don't know. I lived in New York for, just under a decade, and then I got so fed up with the smell and the traffic and the expensive rents and waiting forever for the train. I mean, it's like it's not practical. It's
Right.
like for a jazz musician, I mean, it's totally ludicrous. So I moved to Spain. I had a lot of work in Europe, and my personal situation brought me to Barcelona, where I had spent a lot of time. And I lived there for a year or so, and then moved back to Boston and got another degree. I wanted to be closer to my family. I'm an only child, and they live in Northwest Connecticut, and so Boston's really comfortable. It's nice. So I'm primarily in Boston now. I kept a place in New York City for a bit, and then gave it up. And I mean, I go down there every week or two anyway, and I get to play with the greatest musicians in the world still. And there are some great players in Boston, but New York City is the mecca.
Right, of course.
Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of musicians that don't live in New York City anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I've been noticing. Is you talk to a lot of folks. Like I ran into a trumpet player up in Burlington, Vermont, and he was telling me he had been in Joe Lovano's band and all these great bands in New York City. He said, I just got sick of it. If I need to go to New York for a gig, I hop in the car, drive for 5 hours, I'm there. But then I get to come back to someplace that I'm totally comfortable, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Having a healthy place to live is so important to your mental health. Just driving around looking for a goddamn parking spot daily, it's just, it wears on you. So yeah, Boston is where I am now. I mean, I could live anywhere.
Right. Cool, man. So I wanted to go kind of off track from saxophone. I heard that you're super into boxing. Is that something you do very often? And like, why choose that outlet on top of music? Any reasons?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't box anymore.
Okay.
I boxed for about 7 years, and while I lived in New York City, and I mean, I started boxing to quit smoking cigarettes.
All right.
It seemed like, I don't know, the healthy way to quit. So, and then I just kept with it. I had an amazing coach, and I got into it. I don't know. Cool. My grandfather used to call me Rocky as a kid. And my dad grew up in the same town that Chuck Webner, who Sylvester Stallone based Rocky on. He grew up in the same town as him.
Nice.
So maybe it's in my blood, but and it's just great to get out your aggression in a healthy way.
Right.
I mean, the fighting thing, I sparred a lot, and getting punched in the face and other parts of your body wasn't so great for me. So the last concussion I got, I just said, I need to put the kibosh on this.
Yeah. Especially somebody, getting punched in the face, that's probably not going to be the best for your career of playing the saxophone.
Yeah, or just all these studies now with the football players getting smashed around.
Right.
I mean, getting punched repeatedly in the face it's not the wisest decision. Right. So I bought a motorcycle instead.
Cool. So you still get that exhilaration without the shots to the face.
The adrenaline rush, exactly.
All right, so I like to ask everybody that comes on the show these particular 5 questions because I feel like it's really interesting to hear the different answers. So the first one is, what is one educational material that you feel like you couldn't live without? Okay, is the internet a cheap shot? Of course. No, that's totally fine. I had somebody else say their smartphone,
Oh, yeah. Well, both of those. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's not that interesting of an answer, but we're so attached. I mean, it's part of our lives every day. So, yeah, internet, the interwebs. Who was the teacher that made the biggest impact on you and why? And we may have already talked about this, but... Yeah, I would say 2. One is Liebman. I mean, he taught me so much about about manipulating the music, and creating your own voice. So just in terms of expanding my musical imagination, Liebman. In terms of, the other person I'm thinking about is my first saxophone teacher named Larry DeVorn. Cool. An incredible teacher, but an attorney.
Wow.
And he showed me that, and he can really, really play. Went to, Miami and did that whole scene. And he showed me that it doesn't have to be only about, being a professional musician. There's more to life than that. And you can do other things and still be happy. And so that was eye-opening as well.
Cool. I wanted to ask you one more question about Liebman. I've been checking out a whole bunch of his stuff just on like physically playing the saxophone. So you had mentioned that he was so big in terms of developing your own voice and just, generally coming through as yourself. Did he also teach you a lot about the horn, or was it more on the other side of things?
So when I was 12, I did his workshop in Pennsylvania at his home. And I remember, and I'll never forget this, the first day he told everybody, there were about 12 of us, I think, in the room, all, everybody's older and significantly older, and I didn't know any of these people. And he said, okay, everybody, one by one, we're going to stand up and play, and I'll tell you what I think about you. He said he said some things about my embouchure that weren't particularly so PG. Yeah. So, we never got into much of the technical side of the playing. Okay. I don't know. That's never really been a thing for me, technique. Just in terms of importance. I've never, I haven't practiced at home in a decade. Wow, it's just not something that I'm really interested in doing with my life.
Okay.
I want to, I practice in my mind and in my fingers 24 hours a day, it seems like. But with the horn itself, I got lucky with a sound that is mine.
Okay.
And which is, for me, the most important thing. And in terms of like practicing altissimo or long tones, it's just, that ain't for me, man.
That's super interesting.
I don't want to do that with my life,
Yeah.
If something is really, really interfering with the way that I execute, and then I'll pay attention to it, right. Or maybe if I play a gig, if I'm having trouble getting from, I don't know, playing from a low C sharp to a low B, moving around the low end, maybe I'll blow on a gig and just play in the low end or something, to work. But I ain't gonna do that at home.
Wow.
Home is for peace and quiet, not for, So anyway, the technical stuff, we never really got into it. Maybe if I had a different schooling as a kid, maybe I'd have a view. But my teachers never got into that stuff with me.
That's interesting. Do you ever get into it with your students? Do you have like a certain level that you like your students to be at in terms of technique, or do you just kind of tell them what you just said?
Yeah, if there's something that's really obvious, I'll address it.
Okay.
But I don't like spending that much time on that. I'm more into like loosening up, right. Being loose while you improvise and being creative and composing creatively, not necessarily working on the saxophone.
So you kind of see the saxophone as the tool for just expressing what you hear?
Yeah, you don't train your vocal cords to speak. You don't sit at home all day and like go like la 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 la. The saxophone is an extension. So,
right. All right. So my next one is: what is one thing that you make every single student work on without exception?
Every student. I make every student listen.
Okay.
But your question is on the saxophone, you mean?
Not really. I mean, it could be listening, and I don't know if you make every single student work on any one thing, but, it could be anything related to music.
For me, having your own voice is the only path. That's the end of the tunnel. That's our goal here, is to develop your own identity on the horn. And so finding ways to achieve that is what I stress for every student.
Okay.
And that usually means listening to a lot of music and analyzing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have every one of my students do extensive listening to in all genres, and like we were talking about earlier, not just like I hate it, I don't want to listen to it, but I made them explain to me what they thought of it and why. Why does this song sound like every other song? Tell me why. What, are they the progressions? Is it the rhythmic stuff? Is it, so, and why don't you like that? Or why do you like that? Mm-hmm. It's just analyzing it is, and it goes back to what Liebman taught me. And this is not like, new, innovative way to teach. It's like Liebman would have me transcribe something and then analyze it so I could explain to him exactly what was happening. Cool. And so many students, look, this takes a hell of a lot of dedication, and it's not for most people.
Right.
And so a lot of students, even in college, are just like, I don't want to do that shit,
Right.
And then I say, well, then you should just, do something else,
mm-hmm.
Be an engineer or, do something else with your life.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. So I would say finding things, developing ideas and working on ways to develop your own voice.
Right.
Is what I share with every student.
Cool. And it's funny you say that, like, find something else to do with your life. Everybody thinks that's such a mean thing to say, but it might be the most valuable thing you could ever say to somebody, because if they're not ready for the amount of work and struggle, and like you said, we don't have money coming out of our ears, they're going to be stuck,
Liebman told me when I was 12 years old to do something else with my life.
Really? Wow.
But and later on, he said, "Oh, I just told you that because I knew it would motivate you."
Yeah.
But maybe it wouldn't motivate me, and maybe I would do something else. And so I'm happy you said it to me. I don't know. It was really mean at the time,
right,
but
right. Yeah, it hurts at the time, but it's probably a good piece of advice for sure.
Yeah, tough love.
Yeah, exactly.
Tough love. Yeah.
So next one would be, what is the one personal quality or characteristic that you feel makes somebody successful in music, if there is one?
Well, that's interesting. The obvious thing would be to say that you're a decent human being mm-hmm. and a good, kind person. Yeah. But there's plenty of crappy people out there that do really well. So, especially, in the past, right. in over the past 100 years of jazz music. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's one thing. Yeah, having, and then I would say like having a unique voice mm-hmm. on their instrument, but there's so many people that sound generic who work a lot.
Right.
And oftentimes I think people hire people because they're just kind of there and easy to deal with, mm-hmm. And people don't hire people because they're unique.
Yeah.
And, it's like they fit the role of just being there, a side man. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that special. Maybe they can really play their instrument, well, and they're on the, they're a B grade musician, and that's good enough, or they're friends, What I would say is be friends with everybody if you can.
Yeah.
If you want to work a lot, look like a really, really nice person.
Yeah.
And be with friends with as many people as you possibly can. Yeah. Schmooze your butt off, because that will open up, more opportunities to work.
Definitely. Well, it's interesting you say that too, because I think a lot of times people get hired because they sound generic. because it's easier for somebody to hire somebody where they know what they're getting instead of, somebody who's going to be trying to grow on every gig. It might even be threatening.
Absolutely.
And then the last one would be, what is the best musical purchase around or under $100 that maybe you've made in the recent past?
Musical purchase.
Yeah, like
around
something related to, your instrument or education or something like that that's kind of affordable on a broad scale.
I'm not really into the gear thing. So that wouldn't make it. I got Train's vinyl pressing of One Down, One Up, Live at the Half Note.
Mm-hmm.
That, so listening to that and seeing the beautiful packaging they did, mm-hmm. that's pretty significant to me.
Cool.
What else? Has been important to me under $100. That's really tough.
Yeah.
I guess every penny that I put into making my recordings,
okay.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's, leaving a paper trail of my music and being able to release that stuff to the public, to whoever may be listening. I don't know. So every penny that I put into those projects is the most important to me.
Cool. Thanks for taking the time to do this. Is there anything else that you want listeners to look out for? Anything you've got coming up? And how can they get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Sure. Just through my website, noahpreminger.com. And I have a couple records coming out. I have this record on Crisscross that came out recently and with an amazing band. And next month, in March, I have a record coming out with an amazing Finnish piano player named Frank Karlberg.
Oh yeah, Frank, that's awesome.
That actually we recorded in Jordan Hall at New England Conservatory, and it sounds really, it sounds like butter.
Awesome.
And in May I got a record with a close friend of mine who's an incredible drummer named Rob Garcia. We have a project called the Dead Composers Club, and the first volume of it is all music from Frédéric Chopin.
Oh, cool.
And so that comes out in May. So we'll be doing a record every year of a dead composer.
Wow. So. Man, it never stops for you. So obviously keep your ears open for all of Noah's stuff. There's going to be plenty of it coming out all the time. And thanks again, Noah.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So thanks to Noah for sitting down with us and dropping some serious knowledge. I think with that interview, it's just really cool to see what a real live working musician is up to. And I think you probably heard what I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. We weren't really talking about gear and very specific stuff in there. It was more kind of what life is like as a professional jazz musician, what it's like to put out a whole bunch of records every year, and just, some of the things that surround a life in music. So I can't thank Noah enough for illuminating us with that. And if you haven't checked out Noah's playing, make sure you go out and do that. You can find links to his website and various projects in the show notes, or you can just go to noahpreminger.com and check out everything that he has coming out, everything that he's doing and currently up to, and learn a little bit more about Noah there. Donna and I really want to thank everybody out there for checking out the show. We've had a tremendous reception over our first 3 episodes, and we're just really happy that we're reaching some people and that you guys are tuning in and seem to be really enjoying the show. If you've got 5 seconds, if you could head over to iTunes and leave us a rating and review. Us being a new podcast, we want to get out there to more people that are searching for content like this, and your rating and review really helps our visibility on iTunes and helps us deliver this show to new audiences all over the world. Remember that you can reach Donna and I at everythingsaxophonepodcast@gmail.com. And also don't forget to head over to our website, saxophonepodcast.com. Sign up for our email list. You get a fantastic free gift with that. And that will allow you to stay abreast on the happenings here at the Everything Saxophone Podcast. So thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week with an interview with Greg Fishman. The great Greg Fishman has a lot of great stuff to say about his new teaching website and everything that's going on in his world. So make sure you tune in for that. All right, everybody, have a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.